Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Kristen Coles with Coles Integrative Medicine, and today we're going to dive into a supplement topic which has surprising uses in women's health, and that is the supplement creatine. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, isn't creatine something bodybuilders take? The truth is, creatine is one of the most researched supplements in the world. And it turns out it has some powerful benefits for women in perimenopause and menopause. That's part of why I want to talk about creatine today, because I see so many women in this time frame of life, and many of them are asking me about creatine. So, we're going to talk about what creatine is, why it matters for muscle and brain health, how to take it safely, and what to watch out for if you're taking it. Let's jump into some common questions I get from my patients about creatine. And today I brought Morgan, my nutritionist, here to do the Q&A with me. Hi, Morgan. Thanks for
Hi,
doing this
Dr.
with me.
Coles. Yeah, absolutely. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
Okay, great. So let's just get into it. I know you've been getting a lot of questions about this topic recently. It's a big topic in just the general public. There's a lot of articles being written about it, podcasts being done about it. So let's talk about it. Can you explain what exactly is creatine?
Yeah, so creatine is a naturally occurring compound. Our own bodies make creatine, and we make it from amino acids. Those are the building blocks of protein. And creatine itself, once it is made, it is stored mostly in our muscles. About 95% of all the creatine is stored in our muscles, but it also is stored in the brain and a few other places. And in these areas, it helps to make and recycle ATP, which is our body's main energy currency. We do get a small amount of creatine from foods like red meat, some dairy, and seafood. But unless you're eating good amounts of these daily, you may not be getting optimal levels. And as we age, our natural creatine production declines. And this is one reason supplementation can be so helpful, especially as we head into these perimenopause, menopause, and beyond timeframes.
Okay, so let's go a little bit more in depth on that because I know a lot of your clients have been coming to you that are especially and particularly within that phase. So, why should women in perimenopause or menopause care about creatine and why should they be taking it?
So during perimenopause and menopause, and then of course post-menopause, we are entering a time frame where our hormone levels are fluctuating, but in particular, our estrogen levels are dropping. And this drop in estrogen has a direct impact on muscle tissue, our bones, and our brain. So, creatine has a special role in a few of these places. For instance, in muscle strength and maintenance, we know that hormonal changes, such as these decline in our estrogen levels, that can speed up muscle wasting or muscle loss. And then creatine itself is able to help preserve lean muscle and it can boost muscle strength and it can be especially helpful when combined with resistance training. One of the things I talk about in almost every patient visit with my perimenopause or menopause women is the importance of starting a really good resistance training or muscle building protocol. And creatine can fit right into this. There's also a large area of energy and recovery where creatine can be very helpful. Creatine gives your muscles and your brain quick access to energy because it helps create energy. So, this means better exercise performance and quicker recovery. We even see that the ability to get rid of lactic acid, which builds up in our muscles after a hard workout, creatine helps reduce that amount of lactic acid afterwards so that you can be back to the gym quicker and recover quicker after hard workouts. In regards to bone health, creatine itself doesn't build bone. However, if we have stronger muscles supporting and wrapping our bone and our skeletal system, we'll have more support, and that reduces falls and fracture risk. And one of the things that happens as our estrogen levels drop is our increase in bone turnover and the decrease in the strength of our bones increases quite rapidly. I also want to talk about brain support. This is actually one of the most exciting parts to me about creatine is that creatine plays a role in brain energy metabolism. So it can protect against mental fatigue and it has some other benefits to the brain, which are quite significant. A few other things I want to touch on is that deficiencies in creatine have also been implicated in various disease conditions, including heart disease, MTHFR gene mutations. So, this is something that regulates our methylation ability. And there is some very interesting roles in cancer that it plays.
Okay, thank you. So it sounds like it's a pretty well-rounded potentially supplement that individuals can take, specifically in that phase of life. I know there's also a lot of emerging research around creatine and brain health. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there is. There's quite a lot of research now that's sort of diving into this relationship of creatine in the brain. And if you recall, we know that about 5% of all our body's creatine is utilized in the brain. And we have recent studies that have shown that creatine can improve aspects of cognitive function, specifically memory and processing speed in older adults. So there was a study in 2023 that found that creatine supplementation improved short term memory and reasoning skills in adults over 50. We also know that when we are experiencing timeframes of mental fatigue, so we've been really stressed or we have been working really hard on a project using a lot of brain function, maybe we're sleep deprived, maybe we do a lot of multitasking. It's also been found that creatine is very helpful for the brain in those mental fatigue situations. There's even some initial research suggesting creatine may help protect against neurodegenerative conditions. So these would be things like dementia and Alzheimer's. That's still being studied, but the preliminary research is exciting. So even though maybe what you've heard about creatine is about the muscles, I am now often thinking about it as a brain health supplement. So that's a really great question.
Yeah, it sounds like there's sort of a diverse population of patients that could potentially benefit from taking it. If they do want to take it, what do you kind of recommend to them as being the right dose or the right amount or quantity or frequency that they should be taking this as a supplement?
So for most women who are, let's just say, midlife, there's going to be a range of 2 to 5 grams per day as a supplement, and a more specific or individualized dose I can discuss with my patients individually based on sort of their medical history and their weight as well. Certain individuals with a more obese weight might need a higher dose, but 2 to 5 grams per day is a very general and safe starting place. Um, Sometimes there used to be this discussion in bodybuilders about doing what's called like a loading dose, meaning starting off at a really high dose and then going lower. I do not do that. I don't have my patients do that. Um, if anything, I will sometimes even divide the dose up, and the timing isn't important either. You could take it morning and or evening. You could take it with or without food, but it is a powder, so it is something that you're mixing into some water.
Is there a specific type that they should be taking? Because I know sometimes you'll see this word on lab work as well. So is it something that you can test on lab work or not test on lab work, or how would they kind of know if they're taking enough?
So that's a very good question because I have to actually be careful when I'm talking about creatine because it sounds an awful lot like something else, which is called creatinine. So, creatine and creatinine. And creatine is a supplement we're talking about right now, but creatinine is actually something that's tested on most standard lab work. And you may have even seen it when your doctor goes over what's called your kidney markers, because creatinine on blood work is a kidney marker. And what's interesting is that creatine, which is our bodies making it inside, and even without supplementing it, creatine breaks down and is processed out of the body via creatinine. So there is a relationship, but it is not a direct relationship, meaning if I measure blood work and look at creatinine, it does not tell me if someone is deficient in creatine. However, sometimes individuals taking large amounts of creatine might have a higher level of creatinine when tested on the blood work. When we purchase a supplement of creatine, it is important to pick the right type of creatine. And what I mean by that is that you want to pick something that is called creatine monohydrate. That is the specific form of a supplement that you want to be looking for. And I do have like, I'm partial to Thorne brand creatine. It's powdered, it's pure creatine monohydrate, no additives, it dissolves easily. And most importantly, it's third party tested for quality.
Okay, that's really important to know for people to make sure that they're buying the right kind. But are there any particular clients or patients that you wouldn't necessarily recommend this to as a supplement? And then are there any side effects that people that do decide to take it should be looking out for?
Yeah, this is such an important question. Now, creatine is generally safe for healthy adults, men and women. There's a few things that I always take into consideration. The most common side effect can be mild digestive upset, meaning it can cause some digestive bloating. It can cause loose stools. That tends to happen if you take too much or too high of a dose at once. So, if I am talking about starting creatine with an individual patient, I may start at a much lower dose and then build up to that 2 to 5 gram dosage and ease it into the body, get the body used to it, and then make sure that it's tolerable. But I do have some patients, if they have ongoing GI concerns already, where they're already predisposed to an increase in bloating or loose stools, this might not be a supplement that I choose to add to their protocol until we've healed those underlying GI situations for them. There can also be, with some patients, some water retention that occurs in the first few weeks. So I am always recommending that you take creatine with plenty of water, make sure you're hydrating well. And then we can also split, I think I said this before, we can also split our dose into two smaller doses throughout the day.
Is there any reason why there's the water retention that has to do with taking this as a supplement?
Yes, that's a great question. So the creatine monohydrate, because it has to be synthesized and made in a lab, it is actually made with a water molecule to stabilize it. So every creatine that's going in the body that you're supplementing has a water molecule on it. So then it can add to that overall increase in water inside the cellular network. And so that can create that feeling of an increase in water retention, but that usually goes away within the first few weeks of taking it. The body sort of normalizes. But that's also partly why sometimes people notice this ability for creatine to help bulk up the muscles. Part of that bulking is just the addition of some water molecules inside, and that will normalize over time. I do want to mention that there's a few other situations where we would avoid creatine unless your doctor tells you it's appropriate. And that's going to be individuals with diagnosed kidney disease or significantly impaired kidney function. We want to be careful with any additional excess protein in those situations. And then I don't recommend it in pregnancy or breastfeeding, generally speaking, but this would be an area where also you might talk to your individual doctor. We just don't have research in those situations.
Okay, so during that, you kind of mentioned this word bulky, and I know this is a common conception that people have about taking creatine. Can you talk a little bit about how taking it would potentially change how patients or clients look?
Yeah, so the overall goal for taking creatine over time is to enhance our muscles' capabilities and ideally create a more chiseled or leaner toned physique with our muscle mass and reducing fat gain. And that is ultimately what creatine will do. But there is this initial phase where that addition of the creatine can maybe have that water retention that makes people feel like they're a little bit bloated or retaining water. And I think I went over, some of the ways that we can troubleshoot that.
Okay, and then if individuals decide to start taking this as a supplement, how long do you generally say that it will take to notice some of the benefits?
So, if we're really looking for muscle performance specifically, it could be 2 to 4 weeks. You could notice a difference. You may find that you can, if you're a weightlifter, you can lift a little heavier. Or what I really see is that quicker recovery after workouts, which can be a big deal. If we're looking for the brain benefits, it's a little bit of a longer game. The research shows it might take 4 to 8 weeks of taking it every day. I think sometimes even longer for brain health. But the key here is the consistency, trying to take it every day and then doing that over the course of a certain time frame to then really see what the benefits are going to be for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That's all I have on the question side. Hopefully, you've covered a lot of things I think that are going to be very beneficial for patients and people to know about taking this supplement or if they decide they want to take it. Is there anything else that you want to kind of say in closing or anything else you want to touch on relative to this topic?
Well, I will say, even though we were kind of honing in on using it in perimenopause and menopausal women, it is equally effective for men for all sort of the same reasons I was discussing here. And creatine is not just for athletes. It is for any of us who are interested in protecting our muscles as we age, supporting our brain health, aging well, especially during and after menopause for women. And so I think if you're considering adding creatine to your wellness plan, I would make sure to get a high quality creatine monohydrate, the Thorn creatine, which is on my full script. I will put a link in my caption to my full script account so that you can find the creatine there under my favorites. But if I'm not your healthcare provider yet, check in with your healthcare provider or come see me for a visit. And always make sure that that is something that's going to work for you individualized. And thank you, Morgan, for helping out. And if you found this video helpful, if you're watching it, please like the video, share it with a friend. You can subscribe to my channel. I do a lot of women's health tips. And if you have tried creatine, let me know in the comments what your experience has been. And I would love to hear from you. So thank you, Morgan. And thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you in the next video.